A very obvious use case for this pattern is when you want to parameterize objects with an action to perform. That's exactly what we did in our example. We turned an action, a button click, into a standalone object which we can pass around. But there's more potential use cases. Supporting undo is one of them, as we've covered in our second demo. Also, consider this pattern when you want to specify, queue, and execute requests at different times. The lifetime of the command object can be independent of that of the original request. You can transfer the command object to another process and fulfill it there. And lastly, you can also easily augment this pattern to store a list of executed changes so they can be reapplied in case of, for example, a system crash. To implement something like that, store or log the command object and re-execute it in case an issue happens. Let's have a look at the pattern consequences. The main consequence for this pattern is that it decouples the class that invokes the operation from the one that knows how to perform it. This is the single responsibility principle from the solid coding principles at work. Interesting to know is that commands can be manipulated and extended like any other object. Commands can also be assembled into a composite command. For example, a button which restarts creating a list of employees from the context of an employee might first execute a clear employee list command, followed by an add employee to list command. In general, these types of commands are an instance of the composite pattern, which we've covered earlier. Lastly, as far as the positive consequences go, it's easy to add new commands because you don't have to change existing classes. You simply add a new class that implements the required iCommand interface. That's the open-closed principle at work. A potential negative consequence is complexity. By transferring requests into objects, we are adding an additional layer. Let's check out the related patterns. The first related pattern, as you've probably guessed, is a structural one, the composite pattern. This can be used to implement commands composed of other commands. Memento, a behavioral pattern, can be used to store the state a command requires to undo its effect. That's coming up in the module after this one. And this pattern is also related to a creational pattern, the prototype pattern. That's because a command that must be copied before being placed on the history list, which is what you need in case you want to support undo, acts as a prototype. There's also a relation between the chain of responsibility and the command pattern. Handlers in the chain of responsibility can be implemented as commands. When we look at some of the other patterns in this course, we find others that connect senders and receivers of requests. In that regard, chain of responsibility, command, mediator, and observer are all related. Chain of responsibility passes a request along a chain of receivers that can be defined at runtime until at least one handles it. Command connects senders with receivers unidirectionally, for example from a button that's pushed in a UI to the action that finally gets executed. The mediator pattern eliminates direct connections altogether. Communication runs through the mediator. And lastly, the observer allows receivers of requests to subscribe and unsubscribe to them at runtime. So all of these patterns connect senders and receivers, but they all do it in different ways, solving different problems. And with that, let's check out the module summary. We learned about the command pattern in this module. It's a very common pattern, especially in rich UI design projects. It's intended to encapsulate a request as an object, thereby letting you parameterize clients with different requests, queue or log requests, and support undoable operations. As far as implementation goes, methods on the command are defined on an abstract base class or interface. That interface is named command, and it's implemented by concrete commands. Remember that the receiver can be any object, and the invoker is often a UI element. Also, it pays to add a small command manager class in between, which can then act as an invoker. Like that, you can build in undo, redo, or likewise functionality in that command manager. For once, let's not continue with the next most often used pattern, but instead cover a closely related one, the memento pattern.